with that, we're going to go on to the website. I will show you kind of what it looks like from the educator's perspective and then the student perspective, how they read a book and different ways they can set it up to make it work the way that works for them. So I'm on the Bookshare website, bookshare.org. I am logged in as a teacher. And so when you log in, you get access to the account, whether you set it up or a colleague adds you. You log in with your work email and a password that you set up. The My Bookshare page is sort of the Bookshare dashboard where you add your students who qualify, you add your colleagues. You can see, who's reading what and when and so forth through the My Bookshare page. So say, you just get added and you have a student you want to add. There's a members link under the My Bookshare heading. There's also an Add Students button. Either way will work to add a student to the member roster. It just takes you to the members page. So you'll see the member roster. It will show all the students either at your school or your district who has been given access to the Bookshare account and a little information about them, their grade and birth date, etc. And then there's an add member button to add your student. So the system does require first name, last name, birth date, and current grade. And then you assign a username and password to them, and that can be an email address, a nickname, any combination of their first and last name with some numbers. It does have to be unique. So like, J Smith is probably already taken. So you just have to find a unique username that hasn't been used before and set up a password. If they are using a login for other platforms at school, maybe keeping it the same as some of those so they can easily remember, but that is how they log into their account. And then under the section qualifying information, this is where you check what type of print disability the student has that makes them eligible for Bookshare. So visual, learning, physical, a combination of all three. And that is all you do. There's nothing you need to send in to us. We don't want IEPs, or evaluations or anything that has more personal information. But you are saying to the best of your professional knowledge that the student has a visual learning or physical barrier to reading traditional print and they need the accessible formats. So over here, under plans, so let me get that out. This is where you check if the student has an IEP or 504. So as someone asked in the question a few minutes ago about the National Instructional Materials Access Center, which is only available to students with an IEP. So if your student has this box checked because they have an IEP and then you find a textbook you want for them that is NIMAC restricted, you'll be able to assign it to them. If your student doesn't have that box checked and you try to assign a NIMAC, you'll get an error message that it is only available to students with an IEP. And we often have, so there's titles that are available in the NIMAC that we might have in our collection that are available to anyone. They're not the NIMAC version. And it's kind of a bit technical, but sometimes the formats that publishers give to the NIMAC is a specific file type that is readily converted into an accessible format. So the NIMAC-based textbooks, have the headings and the images and the layout. Oftentimes the textbooks, not all of them, and we have some textbooks that are formatted properly and have all their pictures. It really depends on the file format the publisher gives it to us, or in some cases, and when Bookshare first started, the books got into the collection by being scanned in. So we had volunteers that chopped the spine off a book with one of those big cleaver paper cutters and then scanned in page by page. So, if you ever used a scanner, sometimes it cuts off sections of the text or it changes formatting. It's just scanned pages, and when they're put all together, it doesn't have maybe the headings or the layout like the original book had. So that sometimes you might see the same title and a NIMAC version and a non-NIMAC version typically that NIMAC version will be the best quality with the best resolution and so forth. But sometimes, you need a non-NIMAC version because the child doesn't have the IEP. And if they have a 504, uh, many people have argued students on 504 plans should be able to use the NIMAC, but the way the law is written, it's only an IEP. So again, these boxes are not required to add your student, but if they do have the IEP, be sure to check that so they can get those NIMAC versions. So that is kind of the basic information to add a student. There's also a reading preference section. You don't need to do anything with this, but it's particularly useful for students with visual impairments. If you're going to be downloading a digital braille for them, you can set, if it's a refreshable braille display, the cell width and the Braille grade. So I just like to mention that. So then when you download those Braille files for them, it will be in the right format for whatever type of device they have. But you can ignore this for most students who are just going to read in the Bookshare web reader, on their Chromebook, which seems to be the most popular tool used in schools. Now, you don't need to worry about file format or anything. But for the VI kids, that's often helpful. So you add in all the information, you hit save. That student will then show up on the member roster. Under the sponsors link, this is where you can add your colleagues. So if you're supporting a student, chances are they are also in a science class or a history class. Those teachers can be given access so they can assign the books they want the students to read for that class. So you add them similarly to the way you add a student. Sponsor is just the term our system uses for educators. And a sponsor can be a teacher, a librarian, an assistive technology professional, a reading specialist, really anyone who is supporting a student and has a need to assign a book to them. So you've added your students, you want to find the books for them. At the top of the page is just a general search bar. You can search on title, author, or ISBN. I'll just search on Harry Potter. That brings up 479 books. That's every version of every Harry Potter book that's ever been written. Screenplays about Harry Potter, dissertations written about the Harry Potter phenomenon. It's really a wide variety of books that have anything to do with Harry Potter. So that's a pretty wide search. There's also an advanced search link that you can look for, a word in the title, books by certain authors or publishers, a word in the synopsis. If you want books that have images, you can check that box. We've been working over the years to make sure a good portion of our images and books have an audible image description. So for students with visual impairments, when the reader comes to the image, it will say, image of a boy reading a book under a tree. We rely on volunteers to help us get in that alt text to read the image descriptions. So if you want a book that has that, you can check that. We do have books in a variety of other languages. So if you're working with a student who reads in another language, you can check to see what books we have in that language. I think there's something like 70,000 books in Spanish. But just to also keep in mind, when people see all those different languages, they think, oh, great, this would be great for my student who's learning English. That does not qualify the student for Bookshare. Now, an English language learner could also have a visual impairment, or maybe they have a learning disability where they have trouble reading in their own language. Then they could be given access to Bookshare. But just on the basis that they're learning English is not a Bookshare eligibility criteria. But people get really excited when they see all those languages, so I like to mention that. Maybe you're working with a third grader who loves animals. You can, also select books by the different genres. So as you can see, it's pretty much all the genres you would see in a regular bookseller and bookshop. And then hit advanced search. And so here's books about animals on a third grade level to, help narrow your search there. Lastly, this browse link takes you to our page that the Bookshare collections teams puts together special collections and featured collections based on, if there's a certain history month or popular theme in the news, they will create a special collection around it. This is also where we have our standard running collections that are always there, like the New York Times fiction bestsellers. When they come out with their new list, our team looks to see what books we have in the collection and then add them to that New York Times list. I know for our adult members, the New York Times are their favorite section. We'll update what's popular for teens and kids. Again, what's featured, disability awareness, books for teens and so forth, kids, teens, Fortnite, really popular with young adults. So there's a collection built around that. And then in the educator section, there's books, a selection of books. It's not every book based on their accelerated reader score, but there's a collection of those. So if you are using the accelerated reader reading program with a student and you're looking for one with a certain score, you could come here to find that. There's books, books by Lexile list, leveled readers, and so forth. So it's just another place to come to find some books that you might want to assign to your kids. The Newbery Award winner, that's a popular literary awards that come out every year. So another way to find books if you're just looking for ideas for what to assign to your student. So you identify the book you want to assign, the titles are hyperlinked and it takes you to a synopsis of the book, some just book details about that. Great, you want to assign that. All you have to do is select that assign button. It will pull up your member roster. Per the copyright law, each title assigned has to be like a one-to-one connection with a qualified and eligible individual. So maybe you want to assign it to all your students on your list, or maybe just a few. You can select who, and then you hit that assign button, and then that book is instantly assigned. Your student can log in and have access to that right away. So for students who are going to read in the Bookshare reader on a Chromebook or computer or on a smartphone or tablet, that's all you need to do. For students, maybe there's a student who is using an assistive technology device or a Braille note taker, and they're not able to really get the book and upload it into their device, and maybe you, as their teacher, is supporting them. You can actually download the book file. So you select that download button. Again, it will pull up all your students. You select the student and say the student needs a BRF. Again, every title is available in all the different formats. Daisy is, there's a digital text file. BRF is for refreshable Braille. That would be, you download the file based on the device the student is using. So say they're using a refreshable Braille display, that you import the BRF. You would select that, hit prepare books, you confirm it's for that student, and then that book file will download to wherever on your computer that downloads go. Usually it's your My Downloads folder. And then you can either, maybe you have the Braille device sitting on your desk. You can import it into that. Some of them do it wirelessly. Some you have to save the file on a flash drive and put it in a USB port. Or maybe you connect the device to your computer. It really depends on the model. But that would be one way you would be providing the book to a student. But that's really the only time you ever need to worry about downloading a file is if you need that physical file to be transferred to a specific device. So I think sometimes that is something that people get confused about. They're like, I downloaded the file, what now? I opened the file and it's just a bunch of gobbledygook. Well, it's not meant to be viewed on a computer. It's meant to be, uploaded, imported into a specific type of device that then renders that into whatever format is needed. Students also can download, once you've assigned a book, they can either read it on their computer or Chromebook or download it as well. But, maybe a younger student, you might be assisting them with getting that file. So you've assigned that book or maybe downloaded for that student, and then they are ready to read that book. So I'm going to now log in as a student who's just a student on a school account. So she's only reading the books that the teachers have assigned to them. So here I am, Anita Book. My teacher has told me I've assigned some books to you. There's an assigned books link. Maybe there's a specific title or just you've assigned a bunch of books and want them to start reading. They can come here and then very easily, all they have to do is select this Read Now button. And this is for a student on a computer or a Chromebook. It just opens in a browser page. So there's nothing for them to download. It is just opening, it's pulling the book down from the cloud, opens a new browser window, and then there's the book. So the settings icon, which is at the top of the page, that is where they can set the book up to look and sound the way they want it to. So under audio settings, it will show voice, and it will show the voices that are available depending on the device and even which browser. So I am on a PC and in the Edge browser. Microsoft makes this line of natural voices uh, they're more lifelike. They're still the AI voice because the Bookshare books are voiced by an AI voice. That's what enables us to have such a large collection. But Microsoft is only making these voices available through the Edge browser, which for a student on a Chromebook, unfortunately they can't download the Edge browser onto the Chromebook because Google makes the Chromebook. But maybe at home they have a PC. I just happen to find that these natural voices sound a little more lifelike. They can adjust the audio speed, slower or faster. For the text, maybe a student with low vision just needs a larger font, so they can adjust the text size and it's changing in the background, so you can see that moving. They can change the font type, so there's a variety of fonts, including that open dyslexic font, which, for some people with dyslexia, they like that font. Others don't. It's all individual. And again, the students have the control of setting this up the way they like it. They can adjust the character spacing to have more white space more space between the characters. They can view the book paginated, which shows side-by-side facing pages like a book, or scrolling, which is just one long text. They can adjust the margins, small, medium, or large. And then they can adjust the line spacing. Every book has a book default. It's just what that book settings, what it opens with. And then they can adjust up to 1.5, 2, all the way up to 3-point line spacing to have more space between each line. And then color and contrast, right now it is with the lemon and black. And so when the student sets it up, the next time they open a different book, it will have, they open the same book, it will retain their settings. But, maybe today they just want to read with this book with the white background with the black text. There's some more muted color options, white on blue, white on black. And these are all different settings that really depending on what someone, maybe a type of eye condition they have where they need a more muted because their eyes fatigue easily, or they need that sharper contrast to really see the words and follow along. These are all strategies that can really help depending on the student's needs. So they can set it up how they like it. It does sentence and word level highlighting, so they can choose any color they want for the sentence and the word highlight. Sometimes over Zoom, when it's reading, there's a little bit of a lag, but when the student is reading, as soon as that word is read out loud, that word is highlighted in that different color. So, okay, I've set up how I want it to look. There's a table of contents, and they can jump to, maybe where they left off. So they have that option to start where they want to start. As they're reading, there's a bookmark icon. They can click that and it will put a bookmark. And then to begin reading, they can just hit the play button and the book will begin reading out loud and highlighting.
Not at all, I say. They better not. Chloe smiles. Then yes, I'd love to. Chapter 6. I text Priya to let her know that I'm bringing Chloe.
So it's, highlighting the sentence that's being read out loud and that word as it's spoken. And as Lynn was mentioning, students who cannot read the at the print book, they're at the library, but nothing works for them. Often just having these, what and I say minor adjustments, they're really not so minor. But the beauty of technology now is they can get all the books they need to read with these features that can really make the difference in how they engage with a book. And obviously, kids as they go through school, they need to master the content to take their tests and move on to the next grade. Bookshare is not a literacy intervention where it's going to teach them new reading skills. Again, for students who are struggling with reading, they're often receiving additional supports, uh, with a phonics-based program or other reading programs. But while they're working on improving their reading and their decoding skills, Bookshare is that option to give them access to that content. So that was just using that Read Now button. They can also download it. Maybe they're going on a car trip and just want to listen to the book in an audio. They have an MP3 player, or they can transfer it to their smartphone. They can just download that as well onto their computer or Chromebook. I think sometimes in schools, kids can't download things, but at home, they could do that on their family computer. And so that will just show that it's downloading. Once it says is available, they can open that and then transfer that to their device. And I think students get the technology pretty quickly. So even the younger students who maybe are using a Braille note taker or Braille display, they early on learn how to download the file and get it onto their device and become very proficient readers. So that is the student reading experience. I know we're running low on time. I want to show the Help and Learning Center. This is where there's a bunch of articles of frequently asked questions. If you get stuck, you forgot, what are the different ways to read books? I've demonstrated some, the Bookshare Reader. There's 26 different pages, help articles that talk about the different ways of reading books. In the presentation that you have access to, I point out the ABCs of Bookshare for Educators. That is a great, it's sort of one link. If you just have this link, you can figure out how to sign up for an organizational account for your school or district, how to set up your account. It kind of walks you through how to find and assign the books like I showed, and how you can get your students reading. So those links can help with that. If you still have questions, at the bottom of the Help and Learning page is a Contact Us link. You can send an email to our support team. You can also call them. There's a phone number. They answer their phone Monday through Friday, 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. Pacific time. So we still have a few minutes for some questions, if there's any more questions that have come in.
There have been other questions, but Lynn has been doing a great job of answering them as they've come in. But we'll leave this open to other. We're getting also some thank yous in the chat and very useful information. Before I open it back up for questions, just a reminder, Kathy did put the link in for the survey. So if you could just take a quick moment for those that attended to do that. And also just a side note on the help section of the Bookshare, like I've tapped into that several times and the response has always been very quick. And so really appreciate that on there. So do not hesitate to reach out. So we've got a few more questions coming in the chat.
Okay.
It says, would you explain the process behind requesting a book? For example, is it worth filling this out? How long does it take?
Sure. So as I just wanted to point that out, so perfect timing. So on the Help and Learning page, one of the frequently asked questions is how do I request a book? So it's a short little article about it. There's a book request form. And so yes, definitely check that it's required for school. We have some of our adult members request books, but our funding and priority is for students. So when that's checked, that goes into like a priority queue. As much information about the book as you have, particularly the ISBN. Like with textbooks, there's different editions. Some states have their own edition of a book, or textbooks get updated over the years. So that ISBN that you're using, the other students are using, is particularly helpful for us to make sure we try to locate the exact same version. Any information, if you know that that textbook is in the NIMAC, You can go onto the NIMAC website and get the NIMAS identifier. That's just the ID number they have for that title. That just makes it easier for our team. But they'll always, for textbooks especially, they'll always go look first in the NIMAC to see if it's there, and then get that pulled down into our collection, which again would require the IEP. But so yeah, as much information, you hit next, that submits it to our team. And what they'll do first is reach out to the publisher to try to get a digital file. If they can get that file, the turnaround time can be a week or two. If they cannot get a digital file, they will go and try to purchase the book, from a online bookseller. They sometimes find older books on eBay, and then it gets sent to a vendor who scans it in. That can take a couple months, depending on the size of the book, how many they have in the queue. So we always recommend, like, even if at the end of a school year, you know what you're going to need for the next school year, to get those book requests in over the summer, because that's when our team really has the time. They're not busy answering questions from people during the school year as much, so they can really work on getting those requests in. But we'll always go to the publisher first. And then once you submit that request, on your My Bookshare page, when you're logged in, there's a My Requests, and it will show you if you have any open requests and it'll show, like, how many days it's been open. Sometimes our team, they'll make an update saying, like, we purchased the book. We should receive it in 2 weeks. They'll put in those updates so you can go back and check in to see if it's still open. And then they usually will notify you by email when that book has been added to the collection. Sometimes those emails go into spam or promotionals folders. So sometimes people come here and they're like, "Oh wow, I see my book has been fulfilled." So you can kind of check back on that.
Laura, the other questions that were in there, someone asked if you were available for consultation, and is it linked to Cleaver for logging in?
Yeah. We don't, unfortunately, we don't. We've explored, a lot of schools use Clever, and then there's a single sign-on where you just, you log in once to Clever, and then you can access all the different platforms. It's a lot of engineering work and, you know, time and resources that we just haven't had yet, but it is kind of like on our wish list to hope to be able, we've actually tried to get some grant funding to support that. Because again, we're funded by the Department of Education, pretty much 100% to operate Bookshare. So we, don't have the luxury of just having a lot of extra money to do other things, but we do hope at some point to offer that. Yeah, I certainly, you can reach out to me. My email is Larar, at benetech.org. If you have any questions, might be faster though, just to reach out to our support team. And if, with any questions, and they can help you with your account or troubleshooting a specific device. We have 2 Braille readers on our support team who are really good at troubleshooting the different Braille devices. If there's glitches, that's a pretty technical process to convert the text into Braille. So sometimes there's some glitches, and the manufacturers update the devices all the time, and sometimes things change. So yeah, you can reach out to me or our team.
Well, wonderful. Thank you so much. There was one other question. Is there a way to tell from the Bookshare library if a book has been fully remediated already?
Well, all the books have been remediated and are available in the different accessible file formats. So, every book in the Bookshare collection, I should say almost every book. There's an exception with graphic novels and picture books. The file format that the publishers give it to us. It's basically a giant image file, and there's no way that our system, which is all done, uh, by I call it the wizard, and in the servers, the file comes in, it processes it and spits it out into audio, into Braille, to Daisy text, into EPUB. Those image files can't be remediated by a computer system. So we are working on having some of those. We know, I think it's, Dog Man, is very popular and kids want to read it. They get excited. They see it's on Bookshare, but when you try to open it in the Bookshare reader, it will just kind of spin on the picture and the system uses optical character recognition, so it can't see the text because it's a photo, it's not actual text. So that is the one issue. If there's a graphic novel or picture book that's not working in the reader, you could submit a book quality issue, and sometimes there is some little tweaks they can do to make it work better. But everything else is fully accessible in the different file formats.
One more quick question, and then we do want to honor everyone's time. Emily wrote, how do we know if an audiobook is a human voice or a computer voice?
That is a great question too. So the majority of our books are the computer voice. We have about 3,000 titles that were given to us by publisher that are human narrated. So kind of the easiest way, well, one way to search is when you go to our advanced search page, there's the books to search field, and you can select human narrated books and then say advanced search. Looks like there's a little over 3,600. The human narrated books have this little speech bubble. And these were books that were given to us. We didn't select what titles we wanted, and it's all ages, all genres. So you'll just pull up kind of the giant list. Under the browse page, there are some, let me find it, where they had some human narrated book collections. They do change these. Let's see. Under the special collections, I'll search for human. So here are human narrated audiobooks for kids, human narrated audiobooks for teens and adults. These are just a subset of those 3,600 books that we think kids might be interested in. So that's where you can find these here.